Well, Lawrence, you know I say it every time. I am extremely happy to see you. Half the time, again, as our audience and listeners know, we're looking at each other across Zoom. The other half the time, we're trying to figure out how to get in here. It seems like there's always a roadblock that's being thrown up between us to make it simple. And I get it. Everybody out there, we are all dealing with the same things.
Yeah, I apologize. My kids are 5. They come home with a cold, and all of a sudden I got to stay home, right?
Oh, I wasn't throwing you under the bus,
Yeah,
but
you were,
okay.
I'm okay.
Yeah. Remind me to just slide a little further away. But no, I completely understand. You know, you consider our issue of, hey, how are we going to get together in our office in order to shoot? But every family out there is trying to navigate the schools. Do they stay in class that day? Are they wearing masks? Are they being sent home? You know, I've started reading a little bit about the fact that even now still, with all of the things that are happening in our world, there's still bomb threats out there at schools, for God's sakes. Like, as though there wasn't enough things that are occurring. Kids don't want to be sent home. Maybe they do, and maybe that's the reason they're doing it. But I can't wait to be sent home so I could spend the rest of the day on Zoom.
Well, I mean, sometimes I believe. I mean, I don't really blame the schools because how hard it would for them to police 1,000 students, each kid that comes in the cough, right? But I owe it all to the parents. If you got a sick child, it's not a good idea to send them to school, regardless, without a test.
Without a test, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that, that falls, again, on if you want to have children. Now, Lord knows I'm getting into a tough conversation here. And, that at some point, where does the responsibility fall? Because if you want to give it to the schools, boy, then you're giving a lot of authority, and then all of a sudden that changes.
That's right.
And if you want to, unfortunately, we haven't built a system that's as easy for us to be able to say to parents, hey, your child is sick, therefore your employer has to let you have the day off.
Yeah.
Now, I would imagine if it was up to our, federal government, they'd give everybody the day off and just pay everybody. But maybe that doesn't seem to be working either.
Yeah. I mean, and the thing is too, we're waiting for, possibly more information about the vaccine, and that's in the next couple of weeks. We'll know how that's going to affect a 5-year-old. So, we're looking to that too, because if it adds more protection, well, then that's something we'll be interested in, because we don't want our kids to miss school.
And sharing that information as a community, because I think from what I understand, they celebrated in the northeast of Calgary because they had, I think it was 99% acceptance towards vaccination. And they were struggling with that before. So I think a lot of it is the ease of access. And as we've talked before about the fact that we have the clinic that opened up, that allowed for anybody, but really had a spirit of Indigenous connection to try and get people to come in.
Yeah, and we know, that population is a little less served, and we kind of knew that that's where all the vaccines should go, because they were probably the most vulnerable at that time, and they were when this whole thing started. But to be 99% of a whole neighborhood, that's pretty incredible.
How fabulous is that they're doing the work? Now, a lot of things we're going to bounce around on today. I know you wanted to talk again about the issue of identity, as it were. We'll talk a little bit about, I'd like to talk a bit about Austria, some of the changes happening here in our province. Throw a few things around. There's some fun information that's occurring when it comes to old growth logging in the First Nations in BC. And BC is always an interesting conversation as far as I'm concerned. Flag raisings that are happening. I know we're going to talk a little bit about sports. And even though I'd made a commitment to, folks, every week you're going to hear about some kind of new scam. Last week, I already forgot to bring it up. So you will hear about some scam that's happening out there when it comes to the world of computer, cyber technology, and forensics. So, and then the sad tale of Astro World. Because, we all want to get back. And then all of a sudden, you still have these tragedies. So let's jump into the ones that are some of the heavy hitters right off the bat. Austria is saying, we are locking down individuals, or you're expected to lock down if you are not vaccinated.
Yeah, I don't know how that's going to go over with the people there, but certainly that's not the steps we certainly want to go here, because that would create a lot of unrest and even a lot of support from the vaccinated too. But they are trying to create a very safe environment. They want the numbers to go down because they know they're going to go up. Our numbers will probably go up too because we're all going to be inside. That's what they're saying. pretty soon here. So we just have to be ready for it. And whatever that will be, I don't think we'll get into a lockdown situation here in Alberta, maybe in the other provinces, but who knows?
Well, and some of the other provinces are now relenting on their original plans of, okay, you need to be vaccinated. Now, I do know here in our province, many number of the institutions have said, if you are not vaccinated by this time, and then they were even throwing out graces saying that, okay, you just have to be tested. And yet people are still fighting that. And I'm concerned that here is a group or a population of people who they're willing to accept a certain amount of liability, whether that be they've been told before, oh, you have to turn your lights on when you drive. Oh, you got to wear seatbelts. Oh, you have to. And they've accepted a lot of things. Is this the breaking point? And I sure hope it isn't. But so many of us are at least have the awareness of vaccination when it comes to kids and things, of protecting against polio. And yet then we still see all these people who decide against it. So saying the word sometimes anti can be misconstrued by all of the different social medias as, oh, they don't want to get into the conversation. Well, how do we not have this conversation?
Well, out there, I firmly believe COVID is real, number one. And number two, we were also told by Dr. Raja Singh that there would be 3 things that would end this pandemic. So your vaccination, your testing, and your treatment. Now, we haven't got to the treatment phase yet. So they're anti-vaccination, they're anti-testing. Are they going to be anti-treatment
Well, yeah.
when it comes to taking a pill to end this thing? Right?
Yeah, or still throw the idea out there that, okay, let's create your own hospitals that are managed by your own doctors who are also unvaccinated. There's your opportunity for care.
Yeah.
So as we move now towards the QR code, that's the new one that's come out. If you have to carry that QR code around if you're doing anything that is in a public domain. I've been to a number of restaurants now, and I think it's fabulous. I am more than comfortable when they say, listen, I need to look at that. Absolutely. I still don't understand why there are people out there who are fighting so hard tooth and nail and making it hard on these individuals who are making, just above minimum wage, or some of them, living off the tips on that. Why are you making it hard on these people? Like, I think, why are people rude? I don't understand it.
I think they're just trying to prove their points and be seen, and there's always a camera around when they create this outburst, right? So, you know what? It's just leave these people alone. They're just doing their jobs, right? So,
well, and maybe go back to the old days of shaming, that because you still see people walking around grocery stores that don't have masks on, and there's nobody there to police them.
Yeah,
there's nobody there to kick them out, and I don't have all the answers. I know that this is very challenging. How do we? Do we have to put up the wanted posters in the post office again saying, look at this person here's a picture of them. They don't seem to wear their masks. Now, I don't know how many of us go to the post office, but social media nowadays, I'm sure there's more opportunity to get that information out there. I don't know what the answer is going to be, but I do know that it seems as if you look at the science, if you are vaccinated, your likelihood of getting seriously ill is considerably low.
Yeah.
And if you're unvaccinated, boy, that likelihood seems to be extremely high. And your risk puts the rest of your family at risk. I mean, we can't say that enough.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, but, we have those people around us, in our families, in our office environments. We certainly have to understand their viewpoints, but they should understand the majorities.
Understand the majority, yeah. Got to find an island that we can allow these people to move to. Of course, that island will probably have to be somewhere around BC, because it seems, jump onto a couple of other things. Actually, let's go to Métis Week. Let's look at something real positive. Métis Week is coming up, or is here. It's just happened today, I think.
I don't, it's not really positive. They, found Luriel guilty of treason and hung him. And no, I'm just kidding. But, it's a week of celebration. We do celebrate our Métis identity and our culture and spread it to everybody. It's not just within our own. We invite a lot of non-Métis into our group during the week, and a lot of it is flag raising, because it is one of the oldest flags in the North American continent. And 1816 is when it was raised, and So that's identified, and we certainly acknowledge that. And once we do these flag raising, it's not a territorial thing. It's just an acknowledgement towards, the Métis people who live in these vicinities. So we attend a lot, and we do a lot of flag raisings, but it's important to us.
And I think actually that's a really good point. It's not about claim of ownership, it's acknowledgement.
Yeah.
Again, we're still part of that conversation of saying, hey, the province of Alberta had sort of said, wow, there really weren't any Métis people down here below Red Deer.
Yeah.
Well, there sure seems like there's a lot of artifacts that are down here, a lot of homesteads that they've proven and shown. Sure seems like they were. So perhaps we could acknowledge that these were, areas that were homesteads of Métis culture.
Yeah, for sure. And before these mass European people that moved into North America, there was our ancestors were here amongst First Nations and married into the families and all that. And it was because of survival. We wouldn't have gotten any further if we didn't immerse ourselves into these clans that were here, right? Mm-hmm. And then sort of the progression of colonists sort of came over after that. So, there's a whole layer that people are missing in the storyline. They just assume that the ships just showed up and Canada was formed. And no, that's not how it went.
Yeah,
right?
There was also some evenings together.
Yeah.
Between men and women somewhere along that road.
And Louis Riel Day is November 16th, so that's the day that Canada hung him in Regina, and we sort of recognize that as his day. And we certainly acknowledge that history hasn't been told properly yet. Mm-hmm. They've made movies without using Métis artists. They've, I don't know how much they really knew when they were making these movies back in the 70s and 80s. But certainly his story, we know, should be told properly.
Mm. And I think that's, we're starting to see that conversation. Just recently, I think it was this week, that the province and the school boards are going, well, boy, I think it was the Weisenthal Center had said, you're teaching the positive aspects of Nazism in the schools, and you are teaching the negative aspects, but how do we properly educate people to not look at it as though that was a positive, right? And I think that's important, because that just becomes, to me, how do we teach awareness so that we all understand? We're not ever going to just suggest that, let's look positive, now let's look negative. No, let's look at this as, this was a unique time. We don't want to repeat this kind of time, but there were challenges occurring when you think of positivity. The positivity in the economics was still causing hardship for everybody else. Like, this was not. Much like the whole conversation about Louis Riel, at the time people were just sort of suggesting, let's look at this in the context of treason. Yeah, but who's applying that term? Right. It was the people who were winning. So in a positive way, they utilized that term to meet their needs.
Yeah, certainly. And if you could take a time frame from 1867, July 1st, when Canada Day is, all the way to about 1867, 1885, focus on that timeline. Then you construct that narrative of how Canada was really formed. Mm-hmm. And Canada, when they teach it in schools and it's in the curriculum, they don't talk about those years, right? They only talk about from their angle. Mm-hmm. But certainly the impacts from First Nations and Métis and what that looked like, it's never really spoken about.
Yeah.
Right?
And how do we, again, build more centers, create more opportunities for education, try and get more of that awareness? And I like to think that, again, here we are, tsw@thesqueakywheel.ca. Make sure you email us. Make sure you look us up, follow us on our Facebook. That's how we continue to share this message. Right?
Absolutely.
To try and get it out there. And especially now that the papal visit, you know, when that occurs, I don't, maybe the Pope should apologize for all Christianity. Folks, if you're already angry at me about any statement, yes, there's probably going to be one there. But, Catholicism and such, the idea that as we continue to learn pretty confident we are identifying that residential schools were, the negativity surrounding them. I'm not asking for the Pope to come in and apologize for everything that's ever happened, but we are identifying this specifically was an issue. This caused nothing but seemingly hardship. You need to take some ownership.
Yeah, and why is it taking so long? The TRC recommendations, were out in 2015, and certainly it's been a while since that, and it's taken this long for the Pope to actually. We don't even know what he's doing, but he's coming to Canada with his own delegation, and we're sending our own there. Angie Creer, on behalf of the MNA, will be there. But we certainly want to see what his attempts to actually try to fix this situation will be, but who knows? If it's just an apology, that's sometimes good enough, because that'll certainly create some action behind that apology, and that's what we're kind of looking for. But if he doesn't do that, well, then we'll kind of carry on day to day, I guess.
Well, it sort of connects the colonial side of, our government, and at the time it said, yeah, let's let the church manage this. Well, then you have a little bit of responsibility here as well.
Yeah.
So when we connect those, and again, you can deny and deny and deny and deny as long as you want, but eventually it comes to a head, and here's, one of the times.
The only, real significant action that we've noticed was, the Catholic Church starting to raise money for the survivors, but then the money went elsewhere.
Yeah. Oh, right? Interesting.
So,
and I'm not even to suggest that, this is our nation. There were challenges for many cultures throughout our time in history. This was one that just is really brought to the forefront because, we started to recognize we were uninformed of these burial locations, and why is there no history? Why do we not have any records? Oh, well, somebody's moved them. They're somewhere.
Yeah.
Well, where are they then? Why wouldn't that be sort of part of the public record?
Yeah, exactly. And the other churches, United, Anglican, all the other ones involved in residential schools have apologized, and they're creating their action, and which is good. And Protestant churches, but we really look to the Catholic Church as the main big one.
Yeah.
Right. And what their action will be.
Now let's jump on to something else that's kind of been polarizing for the last little while. You use the term race shifting.
Right.
Now I often use the term identity awareness, or how we culturally connect.
Yeah.
Where did you want to go with that?
Well, race shifting is certainly, it's about that action, right? I mean, you can self-identify as Métis, but why are you doing it, right? And can you pass the level of test that each province sort of mandates? And certainly they call it racist shifting in that sort of academic term. Daryl LaRue has written books about it. He's a professor. He's not Métis, but he definitely knows enough to actually write about it. And he talks a lot about the Eastern Métis. So Quebec and those ones who are trying to enter the Métis Nation but don't have the historical connection. We look at that and go, you can't do that, right? Because my ancestors fought for Métis Nation. Your ancestors didn't, right? So there's that real divide that's happening right now, and they're trying to fight us in court, and they keep losing, right? But we certainly don't want to see any of those ones in the West, like Dr. Barassa, who says that she self-identifies, and she's adopted in, but she can't prove any of her ancestors were Métis, right? So you have that sort of idealism too happening in the far West, and we certainly want to stop it there and say no. The province has mandated this. This is their test, right? And if you don't pass the test, well, then I'm sorry, but you're not Métis, right? And it's a really hard conversation to have with a person who's been advocating for the Métis, written books, for many, many years. But the thing is, all your claims go to the wayside, and we just focus on you, as an individual, and pretty soon we just discredit everything that you've done.
I was about to say, we discredit it, and then unfortunately that person's body of work, which may have been valuable, may have been very good, becomes discredited.
Yeah. And
I don't know what the answer is for that individual at this time. Does she say, I was trying to work positively. My personal awareness to be supportive of the culture. But, there was funding that was attached to a lot of that. So how do we, was the funding only there because of the claim of Métis status? If we were the ones who were funding, if the Métis community or First Nations communities were the one funding the individual, not because they claim Métis status, then I think we're asking for somebody to help us when it comes to celebrating the education. But I think when when she's just not asking for that relationship, but just applying, saying, "Oh, I think, yeah." I kind of rambled there.
A little bit.
I'm trying to come up with a way to figure out how we allow for people to share a cultural connection, but not claim the identity, right? I do think we need that space. We do want to be able to invite people into a safe space here in our office and say, come in and celebrate with us and become aware, but don't change who you are, right?
Yeah.
Continue to celebrate who you are. And invite us back to your cultural place so we learn more.
Yeah, I mean, and we know there's First Nations out there that have Métis a connection too. It doesn't take away from the fact that they're First Nation because they are treaty. They're under the treaty. Métis aren't under the treaty. So, and I have First Nation cousins that I can sit and talk to, and they look exactly like me. But I don't consider them anybody but my cousin or a family, right? It's just the government sort of says you're Métis, you're First Nations, you got to pick a side, and once you do, you pass that test. Well, then you can claim that sort of Indigenous connection. But the ones who self-identify or adopted in or have a story that does not connect to either or, well, then we're sorry, but. This is the hardest story that we can tell you, but you're not part of this nation. It's okay to maybe write about it and maybe write that you're not, but certainly don't make the claim that you are connected.
Yeah, no, 100% agree. Let's jump on to a couple other things, Lawrence. Oilers Flames.
Sure.
Now, nobody's really interested in how the Habs are doing. I mean, let's be honest, Lawrence. You seem to care, but the rest of us and the rest of the world don't seem to care. Like, Oilers won, Flames won. Oddly, sometimes have to work pretty hard. Vancouver seems like it's getting pretty beat up. And when we talk about their province in the old forest logging that seems to be going on, hopefully they get beat up a bit more. But the fact that we're all not out there chasing around celebrating, I'm pretty happy that I get a chance to watch some hockey.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind it. I mean, the Habs, I watch all their games still, even though they're living, I think, on the third goalie right now.
Yeah.
But Carey Price, there's no signs of him coming back yet, so we're just waiting.
Well, he has been back with the team, but not in the sense of going back on the ice yet. Yeah. He's closer, and he definitely, big strong shout out to anybody who has challenges with mental health. Even at his level, it really doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where you are. It's a unique challenge for everybody.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping, the best for him because he makes that team better. He makes the hockey better. He makes everything about it better. Yeah,
absolutely. And hopefully he does. He comes back. We kind of miss him, and certainly not seeing him on the ice. May not be the best for his knee, but who knows? There's
a reckoning amongst all sports right now, right? For lack of a better term, I guess it's the Me Too movement in the context, but the skeletons are coming out of all sorts of closets, right?
Yeah.
In every sport. And again, people who do bad things should be, sometimes it comes to light, especially when it's putting that kind of the authority over somebody else, right? When people are taking advantage of that needs to be seen. Well, one of the things, so going back to my context of for our seniors, for our youth, for everybody when it comes to scams, folks, when you get an email that comes to you, and let's say it's from Canada Post, you haven't received anything from Canada Post in 5 years, and they're saying there's a package for you, and it doesn't say who it's from, assume it's a package that is information that's literally nothing more than a scam. Now, if there is a tracking number, don't click on that. Don't click on anything. But if it provides you with a tracking number, it wants you to click on that button. And then it wants you to think that you've gone to Canada Post. So what you can do, and what I recommend, is write down the number. Now you go to the Canada Post website. You have navigated there. You have typed in Canada Post, and you have used your computer to go there. And now you put the tracking number in there. And if there's any information that comes up, you should be able to reach out to the individual to say, hey, did you send me something? Because what happens in these phishing is that people click on those links, and it takes you to what looks exactly like the link you think you're going to. And it's trying to get you to put in either a username or a password. Now, not necessarily for that website, but most people, so here's my next step that I'll lead to since I missed last week. Most people use the same password for everything, sadly. Now, if you're using the same password for typing it into your Facebook or any of your other social media sites, and it happens to be the same one you use for banking, all they have to do is figure out your username is probably fairly straightforward, maybe your first name, first initial and your last name or something like that. And once you've given them your password, they are now in there as what are called bad actors doing bad things. So the only other thing to make up for last week that I didn't share was multi-factor authentication. And I have a lot of family who often ask about that and say, is this a good thing? 100%. If somebody on the other side of the world is trying to get into any one of your banks, your personal information, your Facebooks, multi-factor means you are providing, by having your piece of equipment, whether it's your computer, whether it's your phone, when you're trying to log in, it'll send you a code and an update saying, hey, did you know you're trying to log in here? And if your computer that's trying to log in is in Italy and your phone is here, there's something wrong. Everybody knows there's something wrong. Now, I won't get into VPNs, which are virtual private networks, but those things can happen. But if you all of a sudden get an update saying you've been trying to log in someplace and you know you're not, don't click on anything and immediately go and change your passwords. Next week, we're going to talk about how to make an important password so that you are not threatened. So there's my little my 1 minute scams of the week. Lawrence, one of the other things I want to jump on was in the First Nations in BC. You know, our provinces have always been different. BC, Alberta. Right now, the First Nations are trying to say we don't want to just all of a sudden allow old growth logging. And the province is saying, well, you got 30 days to figure it out. Does that seem like enough time?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I don't really think it is. I mean, at the end of the day, but we've seen those old growth trees. Mm-hmm. We certainly don't want them to be rid off the planet because it takes hundreds of years to actually grow those things. So
you're given 30 days, but it took hundreds of years for that tree to grow. Yeah. Perhaps. And I'm not trying to create a static movement in BC. Again, I don't know, for some reason they could pump their effluent sewage right into the ocean, and yet they don't want our oil. Like, I get it. There's a lot of back and forth when it comes to our two provinces. But I do think that when proper conversation has to happen and the province or the government says, listen, you got 30 days to figure it out. 30 days should be a good starting point to how are we going to facilitate conversation.
Yes, absolutely. But yeah, like we said, you know, the reforestation in the province certainly adds to it. But lumber prices, I'm not sure. You know, I know they're looking at ways to get more trees here in Canada, and certainly looking at those old growth. But yeah, it doesn't give them enough time. No.
Well, yeah, and the term, and I love that, is meaningful dialogue.
Yeah,
like, I get it. We should probably start throwing more adjectives in there. Meaningful, supportive, helpful, energizing, thoughtful, considerate dialogue. Now, you have to, maybe that's what the First Nations group should say. Okay, we also want to throw these objectives in there, or adjectives. Can you confirm that you can meet the needs of each one of these adjectives within the next 30 days? Otherwise, we're going to go back to the courts and ask them to stall things out even more. I'm concerned that when people say this is how much time you have and the dialogue needs to be meaningful, I don't think that's fair.
No. And certainly, affected communities, that could be province-wide, right? So, yeah, you got to be careful when you say stuff like that.
Oh, 100%. Now, I'd like to do some satellite work over in BC in the world of meaningful dialogue. So, folks, when you're all of a sudden decide you need to understand or know where the old growth trees are, look us up, Memphis Group. Push back on the fact that it looks as though we're not going to be landing anybody on the moon. I think NASA was throwing out the idea that by 2025 we would have representation by sort of different social groups on the moon. Sounds like they're pushing that back. Now, again, I don't know why we need to be so inclusive. We send the best people to the moon. That should be it. Now, I'm still trying to figure out what our plan is to do there, because we've already been there before, and what are we going to do now?
Well, I mean, how many lunar visits were there? Like dozen, right? Something like that. And what did they accomplish?
Yeah, well, that it's a barren surface.
I mean, that poor guy who went all the way to the moon on the first one, and he wasn't even allowed to leave the ship.
Yeah.
Right?
That isn't that. So yeah, you had Neil Armstrong who got to step on the moon, but there was
And his buddy too,
Yeah.
right? But
there
there
was Buzz, but the third guy.
Third guy,
Nobody
he-
remembers the third guy.
yeah, because he stayed on the ship.
He stayed on the ship, like so. You could just, it's right there.
Yeah,
You'd think you just open the door and reach down and just touch it.
the poor guy. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but I guess that's what happens when you have to follow the commitments. Lawrence, again, I can't say thank you enough. I know I would love it if all we were here to do was just talk about new bathing suits and what what new shovels are out there because the snow's coming. These are always challenging conversations. Again, folks, this comes to, our conversations come from a Métis perspective. We are not experts at everything, but it's important that I think that we have the dialogue. So when you get to that little red box at the bottom of your YouTube, make sure you click it and subscribe to us. We follow them all. Thank you very kindly. Make sure you continue to support us on Facebook. We're trying to get more into the world of getting our podcasts out on some of the other ones so that you're just listening to the audio. This way you don't have to judge Lawrence and I as to who's gotten heavier, lighter, or whose mustache is bigger, because it's generally Lawrence in all those cases. But make sure you email us. Look us up, tsw at thesqueakywheel.ca, or emailing us. And you can also look us up, thesqueakywheel.ca. And we really look forward to your connection. So from Ross, Memphis, the Captain, Pambrun, thank you very kindly. Lawrence, close us out for the day.
Yeah, I want to thank everybody for coming in, and make sure you subscribe, and we look forward to more conversations. We're going to look at guests coming in here, getting ourselves on iTunes and Spotify, and we look forward to connection there and what that leads to. And we look forward to newer days and possible sponsorship too.
Yes,
So,
we're always looking for sponsors. Thank you to those people who have reached out as we continue to develop our program. We're getting there. So from all of us here at The Squeaky Wheel, thank you very kindly, and we appreciate the connection. Keep the wheels squeaky, folks. The Squeaky Wheel is brought to you by The Squeaky Wheel Company, co-hosted by the President, Lawrence Gervais, from M&A Region 3, and the Captain, Ross, Memphis, Pambrun. Our program is broadcast from Calgary in Region 3 of the Métis Nation of Alberta, which is part of the historic Métis Nation homeland. We also acknowledge these lands are the traditional territories of Treaty 7, Blackfoot Confederacy, Siksika, Kainai, Piikani, Tsuut'ina, and Stoney Nakoda, with whom we share this land on the basis of our historical and ongoing relationships. You can always reach us for comment about our programming by email at tsw@thesqueakywheel.ca or find us on our website, www.thesqueakywheel.ca, and our socials. For our comments, it is our focus to recognize all of our First Nations and Indigenous friends, share connection with Métis settlements, and listen to and show respect to our Métis brothers and sisters and families. Here at The Squeaky Wheel, we give thanks to our elders for their guidance and to Mother Earth for her time she allows us to be here and share her bounty. From all of us at The Squeaky Wheel, Danze.